So, hello there. Hey, how you been? It's been a while. Okay, I haven't made a video in a while. This isn't a very, prepared thing, but I wanted to explore ReScript today. It caught my attention a while ago, never really played with it, but I don't know, been having some recent changes in my day-to-day job, and I'm like a little bit more open to certain like new influences, and yeah, just want to take a deep dive. Well, not a deep dive, like an initial dive, I guess, touch the water of ReScript and play around with it a little bit. Compared, I guess, mostly to Fable, because I do have a strong background in F sharp. But one of these things that this ReScript project seems to do is, well, hit a lot of the same story beats, but just be very upfront with it, and like it's very usable for React applications, which again I like, and that's sort of why I'm interested in. The TLDR is that ReScript exists for a while, is also a less popular alternative to TypeScript. That's I guess why we're all here. Functional programming, strict type system, stuff like that. It's all better. And yeah, I just want to make a little bit of a tool. I've looked at it since 2 days ago, so I definitely am no expert by any chance. And yeah, let's just dive in and then see how this goes. I'll be like nitpicking a lot of things and comparing, saying things I like, saying things I don't like. This video is going to be me rambling. So I mean, you know what you're looking at, and feel free to drop out any second. Nobody's forcing you to watch this. Anyway, so we are in the terminal. We're going to create a new project. We're going to use bun today because obviously I'm a bun guy now. And we'll do bun create Vite because, well, at the end of the day, you still want Vite to be the dev server. It's the cool new thing. So we're going to do Vite. We're going to say I'm going to do something a little bit the Pokemon API. So that's what we're going to build a ReScript app for. We aren't, so there's a way to scaffold like the default ReScript stuff. We're not going to really do that. We're just going to start from like a more JS React template and then bring in everything we need for the whole ReScript. So just so we have like a feel of what do we really need to start ReScripts. I'm gonna start VS Code. Yeah, over here. Let's zoom in a bunch of times. There you go. Yeah, standard experience. We have everything set up for let's say for React, but well, we're not gonna use any of the standard stuff, so we'll just need to install a bunch of things, which I'm gonna do right now. Basically, we need ReScripts as in the compiler. We're gonna need the standard library, which is ReScript core, and we will need ReScript React for some bindings. There we go. Okay, now that I have ReScript installed, I can access that via the command it's installed. So let's do like a bun ReScript. And then it says like, oh, you don't have a ReScript JSON. So similar to how you would need in like a tsconfig or an fsproj, you need the ReScript JSON file. So let's create that. There's like no ReScript init thing, so you do kind of need to create that JSON file on your own or start from the starter templates. We obviously have to create this on our own because I just chose not to do the default template thing. So let's do ReScript JSON. It's an empty file. Create a little snippet because this is a little bit too much to type on my own. What does this tell? It needs a name. It needs to know where our res files will be, which are the ReScript files or your TS files if you want. We're going to use ES modules. It can also do CommonJS. We're going to say in source, which is like compile my ReScript file next to, the JavaScript should be next to the res file. We're going to choose this suffix. I am definitely deviating from what the standard stuff seems to be, but I don't know, this has a nice ring to it. Then we installed the standard library and React binding, so we need to put in all these dependencies. So this is kind of duplicate when you think about it. Like node modules Everything is installed as node modules, which is nice, but I do need to specify, the which is called, I guess, buckle script for legacy reasons, I guess, the ReScript dependencies, basically. And then this is just a compiler flag, which says that we're going to open ReScript core, and we're going to use JSX, so that's good. So if I run this ReScript build thing again, it compiled the dependencies, because I do believe we take a source dependencies on all these things, and that's it. One thing that we also want to do is install a plugin for Vite, so that we can just start Vite and everything works. That one is a little bit more complicated. Actually didn't really prepare that, so I'm just gonna hope that PowerShell still sort of remembered it. It was at J something, so my bad. I'm just gonna need to Google that one. Feed plugin. There we go. There we go. And as I'm a little bit of a connoisseur of Feed plugins, I've had a bit of an interest in, hey, how is this guy doing it? And long story short, it basically is it's gonna compile the files with the executable. That's sort of what I understood from it. So we just shove it in, ReScript, call the plugin, and then the React needs to know that our ReScript files are going to be ending in. So it takes a dot. It's either a JSX file or it is a .re.js, which is the thing I chose. So we already have the dot here, and then the dollar, regex magic, and that sort of matches with what I have here. Okay, then let's create the first file, which is going to be app.res, and let's try and create a very simple React component and just get it on the screen. So first up, as we're using bun, we're using a bun today. We need to do the bun x -- bun to really invoke the Vite with bun. That's why the bun actually. If you never really thought about all these things, the -- bun is really to overrule this shebang that calls nodes. Like if we do npm run Vite, then yeah, it still is going to the Vite part is going to lead to this file and execute that. That's not really what we want, so that's why we put the bun in here. It's a bun thing, I'm a bun guy now. It's just control click, and that opens it. So it says Vite.react. We are now going to take a look at our app file. So it already compiled it, but there's nothing in it, so that's just, makes sense. I can do a add react components, call a file, let make. You have to declare like a binding with the word make, otherwise it doesn't work for reasons. But the nice thing in ReScript is I can just, use JSX. So let's say hello there. And it's kind of strict, so it's not going to know what hello is, and it doesn't detect this like automatically as a string. So I need to do react.string and then put the hello there in there. Okay, it's nice. So let's take a look. What did that create? So pretty much what you expect. The JSX is compiled. It takes the right tag. It used the string as children. So a lot of good stuff. Now, this should still work. However, we're not using our component just yet. So I can do this. And this is the first real weird thing that I'm not quite grasping. Like I said, I've been doing this for a couple of days, just watching some YouTube videos, so I'm no expert in this, but there's this make thing, and it has to be called make, and then it also exports it as make. So I need to import it as make and then alias it later as an app. which is again not the end of the world, but just one of those things that might hit you. So let's wrap this whole thing with a div, and I'll call my div class name card, because that's what the default styling does, I believe. Or we still need to import a certain file. So I'm just going to compare this to what the app.jsx did. It imported the app over here. So I'll need to try and do that as well. And there's a little trick there. Emit a raw value over here and import that file like that. And that's sort of the escape hatch thing. Like everything you put into the percentage raw just goes into the generated file. So I could do nonsense, and it also did it. And then yeah, I misspelled nonsense. So great. So that's that. Then that's the hello world, and cool. That's a good starting point. Now the goal is to do some very simple stuff. Let's do like one fetch request and then see what happens. The idea is that we have an input box. We're gonna type in an ID, and we're gonna use the Pokemon API because that's just kind of cool. So there's a Poke API, and then this has a couple of REST endpoints, and it's just a slightly more cooler way of getting information. So we're gonna do this Pokemon, then just give it like an ID. And then it gives you a bunch of JSON, which we're going to try and display on the screen. So based on the identifier. And that's what we're kind of after for this video. And it just gives you a little bit of a feel of, what's ReScript about. I think it's worth noting that I already kind of like the initial experience. As in, I downloaded a bunch of stuff via NPM, but that's sort of a given because everything just still is distributed via NPM, all the front-end stuff. When you compare it to Fable, I needed to download the .NET SDK and all that. I didn't really have that kind of experience. I just downloaded ReScript as a dependency over here, and we're already up and running. When you look at my extensions, I do have the ReScript extension. That's just the language server. It gives you a little bit of intelligence. So, I mean, pros and cons. It's not like a full or fair comparison with whatever Fable's doing. That's not really the goal. It's just to get a taste out and, yeah, just showcasing what I learned in a short amount of time to get that up and running. So let me just change maybe the title. Feed plus ReScript. There we go. And there we go. First off, let's try and create the input box. So if we do something like input, and we'll capture the ID. So let's say ID and set ID, because at the end of the day, we're just still building a React application. So there's just nothing revolutionary on that side. It's just, use state, use effect, use reducer, all the good stuff. They are a little bit opinionated about the bindings, so you have to use a function in these use states like all the time. There's no other way of doing it. The JavaScript API just sort of supports both, either given a direct value or a given function. It seems to be using a function, and then it already yells at me like, hey, you're not using ID, you're not using set ID. So I like that. I like that in a language. So for the default value, we can use ID over here. Notice that for some reason you don't need to do this, but you can. And yeah, that's one interesting thing where I don't really grasp where the semantics of these start and how it really detects this, like on a Lexing level. But I roll with it. The on change is something that kind of bothers me immensely. Like I tried to look this up, so we're gonna shove in an event handler. And now this event is basically like, if, I don't know what it is, it's hard to get like an idea. So okay, it expects unit, and then we're saying like, oh, it's a synthetic tag. And then you try and go into like what is a synthetic tag, and then I don't know, I feel like this is very confusing. I googled a little bit and then came up with, oh, you need to use React event form, and there you can get the current target function. So you cannot do like event.current target. You need to use functions to access properties. It's like a bit of a design choice they made. And right now this returns a current target, which we are, we're not using it, so that's a problem. And I think we can ignore that. Similar to F sharp, the pipe ignores will work. This is the pipe operator, by the way. So it's a little arrow, not the pipe we know from F sharp, but I'm okay with it. However, we still don't quite get, this current event thing is now like a dot dot thing, which is like definitely an object with keys, but we're not going to tell you which. So in this point on, you just use the string accessor to get a value. And then we can pipe that to that ID. And then it's sort of inferred that this is a string to string, and value should probably be a string. And I'm still very fuzzy on how that actually works. Like I can't really grasp why there's no like function to pipe this to get the value, and then maybe do a little more of a defensive check whether this is an input element or not, the target element. But that's sort of the way I've found out how to get the set ID. So I don't need the unit, and let's just add a paragraph tag. React string again, then say the ID, close the paragraph, and then this is 25. And now this is 26, and that immediately responds. So that's okay. It's good. The next thing we want to do is we want to fetch the request. We could do some validation, whether it still is a number or not. We might get to that. Well, let's first do something a little bit more fun, like that API request. And over here, I'm just going to go to the community. So I looked into fetch. I found this. This worked for me. So let's try that. I need to do a bun install. There we go. And now I'm installing the fetch bindings, which we're going to use to do the fetch request in a bit. And of course, I also need to add this to my packages that I'm using here. So that is another thing. And there we go. Not quite sure if I needed to restart the server. Just trying that, but it spins up very fast. So we have the hello there. And let's do react.use effect. And we have one dependency. So basically, if the ID changes, we want the effect to run. So there's like a special overload for that. Now this takes in a function that either has a has a cleanup function, which is wrapped in an option, which again I like. And then there's an array to represent the one dependency. For some reason, it's an array, not quite sure. But let's say we just have no cleanup over here. This is also something that kind of bothers me. Like it only kicked in after I saved the file. And over here, I need to do the ID. And when I return none, it will work. I could do like JS console log of the ID. Console over here, so it loads 25, put an extra 4, and then it all standard React stuff. Go. Now, the first thing we probably want to do is to validate whether our ID actually is a integer. We can do that with the helper function. So I feel like a lot of the standard stuff is in something called belt. And they can do like belt.int from string, because our ID is a string right now. And yes, so now we just do either it is not an int, And then we probably want to put something on the screen, but for now, let's just do absolutely nothing. Or it is some, and we're actually not, that interested in the int value specifically. We just kind of want to know, is it even an int? Because otherwise the API request won't make any sense. And what I can do now is call fetch, because I imported that package. Fetch.fetch. I also feel like IntelliSense isn't always there. It works a little bit until it like doesn't, and yeah. It's one thing to be aware of. And again, now it's yelling because, well, we should return the none after the switch, but then it's going to yell for the next thing. So I do really much appreciate that, because in this switch case, we are returning unit, and here we are returning a promise of response. So obviously we need to return the same thing. So we can do a promise dot then, and in that promise we can say, let's do fetch dot response dot JSON, which will get us to JSON, and then brings us one step closer to actually getting the data. Now this still returns a promise, so we can do a promise dot done, and that will eventually, just, this is a fancy way of, I guess, ignoring our promise. I don't think this actually does anything, but it's a way to tell that from a type point of view that this returns unit now. So it's like the promise start and fable. Okay, so when we look in our network tab, we can see that we're already running that request, and we're getting a response back. Now we're making JSON of that response. Basically, this is a bit of a bad idea, because when I do 25A, it is going to try new 25A. I learned the hard way that if you use this helper function, it eventually drills down to, let's take a look. So it uses from string, and then it uses parse int, and parse int with even a letter A here still returns 25, and then I'm using that exact value in my URL, so that I'll need to take that into consideration. So yeah, you would expect that this fails with an A, but it's still JavaScript. So either I do a regular expression, or I take an int ID here, but now that complains, and in an interpolated string, I can't just, do that. So I can say belts dot int dot toString. I can't just do a toString on the ID, because everything is with functions. And there we go. And then 25A, it does update like it shouldn't really, in terms of, we probably want to do our validation a little sooner, a little later, etc. And then showed, the request is happening fine with the converted number, but it probably shouldn't have done it twice, etc. So yeah, there's, even with these simple examples, there are a lot of things to take into consideration. And the question is, how far do I want to go for this first demo? In hindsight, probably not that far. We're just exploring a little bit. So cool. Well, we have the API request. So if there is data, let's change this and show the name and an image of the Pokemon. Currently, we're just keeping track of the ID. We could do another state change of well, the name and the image. But of course, we're getting into that modeling terrain, because when you don't, you don't always have the information, you don't always have a name and an image of the request when the application just starts. It's not there. It just needs to do the fetch request first. So either you're in like a loading state, either it's not going to find anything, so we can, have some error handling, or it's going to be in, we have the data, I can show it on the screen. So all of this just screams discriminated union, which we can do. I'll just call this state with a lowercase s. So either it is loading and has just like string, it's loading a specific ID, I cannot name these things, so I can't like do an F# ID colon string. I could if I did it like this, like an inline record definition, which I guess, for now I'm not gonna do. So either it's loading, it failed for a certain ID with a certain reason, something like that, or it has the data, which will have the ID that we tried, the name, the Pokemon, and the image. So that sounds about right. This is not semicolon, but regular colon, I think. Name can't be found. Yeah, there we go. So, there's still the ID. I think like the ID is probably always going to be present. So that's why I have ID here, ID here, ID here. So maybe let's create like a get ID function, which is going to take the state, and we can just switch on state if it's loading of ID. Failed would also just have ID of ID, and data is the same thing. So we're just doing some pattern matching, which again I like. Go. We can so yeah, let's just use state and I guess set state in this case. So the initial state would be that we're now going to be loading 25. Go. We'll no longer just have direct access to the ID, but need to get the ID from well, the get ID. So in this case, we'll have to do get ID from state. That requires parentheses as well. So it's a little bit, definitely different than F#. But at the same time, if you're coming from the more JavaScript background, this is not going to feel so, less alienating for you, which I think is kind of the sweet spot. Like, I learned to appreciate curly braces in the past couple of weeks. Other languages have them, and imagine I mess up over here, like just boo, like failure from my part. Like that doesn't, diminish anything that happens outside of this curly brace. So from like a tooling point of view, I kind of understand why, curly braces do have a certain appeal. Over here, ID can't be found. So again, that's get ID from states, like projection thing, which is the default value, and then set ID. We'll need to do this with set states, and let's do a little inline function. So let's say the value, and then call set state over here, which would be loading and the next value. That I believe this is okay-ish. Yes, so set state actually takes in a function, so I always am able to like have the past value, and need to close that so that works. There we go. So this is another thing. Yeah, I probably want to have like more of a helper function that just doesn't deal with the constant lambda. But maybe that's how we just do things in ReScripts. Like I said, too early days to make up my mind. And then we go get ID state. We'll probably remove this altogether, but for now, fine, 25. And then it still does the request automatically. once we have done the request, we probably want to hook into and detect what the response is. We probably also want to like catch the promise when it fails. So there's a promise catch, which would have an exception, and not quite sure what the what the good way would be to like investigate the exception. I am just going to just use the message and print it to the screen for this little demo. So it just failed. It failed for our ID, and so it failed for the ID. Oh yeah, it fails for ID. It has a reason. So in this case, the ID would be, again, need to make a string of that to string of ID, and the reason would be exception dot, and this is again, you can't dot into these things, so I'm not quite sure. I'm a little bit off script, but there is an exception message. That might be it. Yeah, there we go. Too close. Oh, it's the exception message returns an option, so perhaps there is no message, so that's kind of good, but at the same time, I need to now deal with that. So can I do something a little dirty? Get unsafe. There we go. And this was okay. This is a different type. There's like a part of me that really thinks that this is it. So let's circle back. So that's like reason and reason. The set state returns unit, and we are still expecting to have like a promise, so we'll just return promise resolve, and this becomes units. Yeah, so okay, this needs to like return the same thing as we're returning here, so we'll probably do something more like results. We'll say error. Yeah, just fetch failed for now. So still complaining, but we'll maybe map that further. So we can do like a promise and then resolve, and then just take in the JSON and do like an OK JSON. Or races. Yes. Okay. Good. 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 That's all there. All right. This is me from the future. I actually found out how to deal with the exception thing. So you do a switch on the exception. You hope it's an exception error. Once you have that, it has the message, and that message could still be none. So you try to get it, and you say, "Oh, let's give up," or use the question marks when it's not that. Which if it's not an error, then I'm also returning that. But if we now open, do like a fetch request, it's trying to parse the not found, and it's not valid JSON. So that definitely is our message. So yeah, yay. Yeah, so it definitely is very, very strict. That's part of why we like it, and until it sort of gets annoying. So I'm still a little bit mixed at times, like whether I'm really guided towards finding the right thing, because it can be a little bit confusing at times. Like I'm still really just wondering, like, how do you get the message from the exception here? Because it's obviously gonna have one. So anyway, so how can we test if the fetch fails? We can do like a large number, and then we get JS error, and that ID doesn't exist. So we get a 404, which I assuming we'll get into our capture. Now, of course, we aren't really showing anything to the screen, but we can take a look in the components. If we look at the app over here, then we are in the tag failed, and the reason is the 3 ? So it did definitely get into our catch handler. You know, there's something to be said about this, but so well, let's just go with a happy path to wrap this up. Let's try and look into the JSON, what we can do there. So we're gonna expand on this, and we probably just really want to like decode JSON. Let's write a function like that, which doesn't exist yet, but we will create that in a bit. And it takes the JSON, and the messy thing over here is that your JSON is now type JS JSON T, and that's just another union of things. If I want to go, I just need to like do a switch over here on the JSON. I know it's valid JSON at this point because this this problem is resolved, but then we have to do JSON, and it could be an array, Boolean, or one of the few options. So in this case, I kind of know it's an object, which is going to be my root, and I'll deal with that. And if it's not, I'll just say like, okay, we'll return an error, say like unexpected JSON. And there actually are better ways to deal with this, but just for now, like I'm not going into decoding just yet. And then okay, after root. So that should be it. There we go. And this decodes now, and it will. It's not, it's not gonna set anything really. But once we get the data that we want, we can, pipe after this resolve function into one final, then resolve, and then sort of unwrap that and set the correct state. So this returns a result, and we'll need to dig in further to really, ensure that it's what we expect. We have the root, and it's fine. And now we'll do js.dictionary because it's a dictionary at this point. We're gonna do get, and we pass in the root and pass in the key of the name. So we're just gonna like, can we find in the root object something of name? And then we're gonna pattern match whether we can find some. And again, JS JSON dot string in this case. That would be the name. And if that's the case, I'll just return okay and name for now. Anything else, it's just going to be an error of unexpected JSON. Go. Yeah, no, we can't return just the root anymore. Notice that we're not typing really what this is, but it is kind of inferred that we are returning a result of string, so either the name or the error. So that's definitely still nice. So once we have this, I guess before our catch, we want to do a promise dot resolve, then resolve, which gives us the result, which we again want to unwrap. So we do another switch. And then, this is your functional programming, really. It's just like the type system drives all this. And if we have an error, we can set the state again at this point. Or we could have just caught this, return an error, and then do actually all of this later. So that's also just like a possibility. Yeah, maybe let's do that. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's go that way. So move that here. we'll resolve this as an error, but we're not going to do set state call of that. We're just going to say that the error is, yeah, 3 question marks because we can't really figure out how to catch that. And then if it is an error, let's just call the set state over here, sort of the final station. But if it's okay, it has the Pokemon name, then we're going to set the state, again, the lambda, to, what was it called? Data. And ID, belt dot integer to string of the ID that we had over here. Then the name is going to be the name. Don't have the image just yet, so let's put an empty string for now. This error is the reason. Now the reason will be the error. This, there we go. So 25, we should now have the name. And instead of calling the ID, let's try and see if we can do something else. We can do a switch statement on the current state. There we go. So either it's loading, you can say loading, and then we can say loading interpolated string of that ID. It will have data, so in this case we're just interested in the name. Like that, and if it fails, it will have a reason, so reason, and let's just output the reason it fails. All these things are just the strings. At the moment I save this is actually going to complain, and I should have all of this inside, well, a React string. So let's say message maybe. Just extract that. And again, go with the React string. Go of the message. Yeah, and the switch. There we go. So yeah, I can immediately see Pikachu. It goes 26. We get Raichu. It it all plays out. And lastly, let's just go one level further because it's just a nice visual thing. But let's try and get the image out of there. So inside of the JSON that we receive in the network tab, we can see it also has a bunch of sprites. So it has a node sprites, and there's some images over there. So we want to get the from default, which is going to be part of our decoding as well. So instead of just being satisfied that we're returning the name, we're going to do another switch. We're going to say the root should have a node sprites. Right. And that should be some JSON object again, because that it's an object. That will be our sprites. Inside a sprites, we want to switch and try and find the front default. So sprites, there we go. And we kind of assume that it's going to be a string. So we're going to match that as well. JSON.string. Go, and it would be the image. That is the case. I want to return the name and the image. So the last thing you write in this last expression is always the return type. So that's good. Name is coming from there. So maybe that needs parentheses. Yep, that's it. And of course, it's going to complain like, yeah, you're only having your happy path. What if this isn't, what if the sprite thing isn't there? Then we just need to say error. Oh yeah, that's also something like this is actually okay. This is error has no sprite node. And then here, we'll need to say that this is an error has no front defaults. All right. So the name, yeah, so it's no longer name, it is name image. It is a tuple now, and that should work. And in case, so already a little bit more tricky here, if we wanted to get the image, let's actually do it like that. So we're just going to switch again our current state. We're going to say if it has data, get the image from there, and then return an image tag, image source image. If it doesn't have, then we're just gonna react null because these types need to match, and there is no real concept of null in ReScript as far as I know. But yeah, React has the concept of null, so that's why this binding does exist. And we're going to put that in there. So that's just valid. There we go. It's valid. There we go. There we go. And yeah, you can see that our application is loading. So again, enter your favorite Pokemon number, I guess, and there we are. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this could grow on me. Time will tell. Coolio, that's the end. I'd like to thank you, and I don't know, just go outside, touch some grass. Bye.